Like how much confidence can you really have in the New York Yankees this season? And now Cole going to be out 1 to 2 months. Let's bring on our pal Jake the Snake Hassan. Jake, what do you have for us here on Gerrit Cole? Any bets to be placed because of Cole being out? This could be fading the Yankees, betting on other teams in the American League, AL Cy Young. Break it all down for us, please.
Yeah, I mean, I was already low on the Yankees. I was on this show saying that I wanted their under-win total, that I wanted them to miss the playoffs, and all the Yankees fans took that really, really well in the comments, as you could have guessed. But this was my whole thing with them. If Judge and or Cole ever went on the shelf, they were dead in the water. And now not only has one of them gone down, both of them are dealing with injuries and issues because Aaron Judge already said that he had to go for an MRI for something in his abdomen or whatever. And he was complaining about his toe a month ago in February, the toe injury that bothered him all of last year. So this was my whole thing with the Yankees. I kind of think, you say it's dramatic. I kind of think they might be dead. I kind of think it might just be over. Welcome to opening day starter Carlos Rodon, also known as the guy whose velocity has been down 2 to 3 miles an hour in spring and has given up 1 million home runs. Who's behind him? Oh, only Marcus Stroman, the guy who lasts a half a year and then completely fades. Also behind him, Nestor Cortez, who was bad last year, and Clark Schmidt, who is just bad in general. Really awesome. Great. Hope Juan Soto can do a lot of that heavy lifting because you don't got a whole lot else. I don't like the Yankees at all. I think this is over. Okay, Cole comes back in 2 months. Let's say May at best, around this time in May. They might be too far behind the 8 ball already at that point. Let's be generous and say
they're not going to be so far behind. In the middle of May, they can't come back. I don't like them. Okay, but I mean, come on.
Let's put it this way.
60
all right,
games.
Let's just say that the Orioles and the Astros are going to win their divisions again. You're competing with then 4 other teams already for 3 wildcard spots. You're competing with the Blue Jays, the Rays, the Mariners, and the Rangers. All of those teams, I think, are already better than you with Cole and with a healthy Judge. And let's just be generous again and say that Judge is fine and nothing else happens to him. And let's say Cole comes back. You're already competing with those 4 teams. I'm high on a couple of the teams in the AL Central who I think could be in the mix too. Not saying the Yankees are worse than the Royals or the Tigers at this point being the key word, but okay, you're already behind the 8 ball already, and now you have to fight for a wild card spot because you're probably not catching the Blue Jays or the Orioles for the division without Cole. So I don't like the Yankees at all. Love their win total under. Would never, ever, ever, ever bet them for the division. I've already bet them to miss the playoffs. I bet that like a month ago at 3-1 because I thought that price should be way lower. And as far as AL Cy Young goes here, everyone near the top of the board, their price has gotten shorter, obviously. So now you look at the favorites. It's Corbin Burns, Kevin Gausman, Luis Castillo, some mixture of those guys. You throw like George Kirby and Framber Valdez in there somewhere. I'm very meh on all of those guys. Like, I don't feel super strongly at the price about a lot of those guys. I was talking to Ken about it in a break. I think this gives us an opportunity for somebody, a long shot price, to win this award this year. If Cole's going to miss time, and I already bet, I talked about on the show, Bryce Miller at 200-1. That's come way down, but he's still at about 80, 100-1. Still like it. And somebody who I think is going to have value and whose price is going to come down, Tristan McKenzie's awesome. He posted a 2.96 ERA in 2022. He strikes out 1 million guys. He's been healthy this spring. That has been the biggest thing for him in his career. He's also been good this spring, has only allowed 2 hits in 2 starts. He struck out a couple of guys in each start. I like where he's trending. I think that price is too long. But as far as the Yankees go, I want nothing to do with them still. Didn't a month ago. Absolutely don't now.
I'm kind of rolling through the NFC teams in my head. Like, what teams would I like to potentially win the conference right now? San Francisco obviously stands out, the team that won the conference last year. But if I want to get away from San Francisco, Rams, Lions, Packers would be my choices. Those would be the 3 teams that I would like. And maybe that's kind of like the problem here. I'm guessing you like some of those same teams. Is there like a long shot you'd even like in the NFC? Like, the NFC is like so bad compared to the AFC. So when you trying to work this problem, Kansas City, to play in the Super Bowl, who are some teams you come up with and why?
Yeah, so statistically, I'm going to say teams, and don't laugh, because I don't like some of these teams. But just like, here's the list of teams you would come up with, fitting obvious statistical parameters. The Niners, the Lions, the Saints, the Rams. I laughed too. And then I was like, do I want to do this? And I said, no, I definitely don't. Like basically those four are the easiest fit statistically. Then you have some where it's like there's a couple things that concern you a little bit. Dallas, Green Bay, Philly. That's probably it for me. And then everything else is like an insane long shot that would would be crazier than Kurt Warner and the Rams. Like, yeah, it could happen. But again, as I say with all this stuff, like, yeah, it could happen. Would you bet on it? Even at a long price? Would you really bet it? And so I come up with the same list you do. Let me ask you a question about San Francisco real quick, because you were like, if you want to get away from them. And I don't even, like, it's not just that I want to get away from them. I think people are aware of like the very, very long history of the Super Bowl loser not having a lot of success the next year. And this is, I think, one of those really funny situations where a historical trend and logic, they don't run into each other, but it's one of those things where you go, would you not bet something just for that reason? Like if I said, the last Super Bowl loser that made it back was the Bills, right? That's the last one that made it back the next year. Actually, I have the list
they
right
did it,
here.
yeah, a number of years in a row.
Right. You may have heard. So it's just, it's like they kind of did that for a while. I mean, there's like basically going from loser to go back and win. There's teams that have appeared in the game consecutive years, obviously, but loser back to win, that's a tough case to make. It hasn't happened since the 90s. Like, is that
even
a good
the Chiefs
enough
couldn't do it?
You're saying, so I just want to like add on to when you're like, if you want to get away from San Francisco, I would like throw that historical trend in and say, yeah, I want to get away from San Francisco. Like, yes, I would like to get away from them for a very obvious reason that seems to happen all the time for 3 decades. Like, I want to get away from them. Like, especially, and we have that, and their price is the lowest, and it should be because they're the best team. But like, not that we know something the market doesn't, but I am gonna weight that, and I'm gonna bet other stuff instead, and I'm gonna like take some shots on other stuff. So it's not just like, well, I want to get away from the favorite. No, like I really want to get away from the favorite. It's not just an exercise from a betting standpoint. The Rams and the Packers both making a bunch of moves already in free agency to make their teams better. We've had a lot of discussion on the show about how like the balance of power in the NFC. Sure, the Niners made it last year. What's the pecking order after them? Detroit's involved. Are the Packers involved? Are the Rams involved? Could one of those teams maybe be the number one team in the NFC next year? What about what you've seen on the NFC side in free agency so far? Anything that stands out here in about a minute, 90 seconds?
Yeah, I thought that Aaron Schatz of Football Outsiders, or formerly of Football Outsiders, made a really good point this year recently that he doesn't get worked up about the free agent signings nearly as much as we all do because they don't move the needle. They wind up not moving the needle as much. The Packers, you look at the Packers, they are bringing back a ton of young talent. They were the youngest team in the NFL last year, won a playoff game, against maybe the best team in the NFC. And Jordan Love did all that with an extreme amount of injuries to his offensive line and his pass catcher core. I'd be very excited if I were a Packer supporter today, and especially after the addition of Xavier McKinney, maybe the best safety on the market this offseason.
Hey, if you get any tips about new basketballs in the NCAA tournament, this is going to be the year to tell us about them. I'm just going to put it that way.
Oh,
if you hear anything about the old Wilson Evo,
got
to give us a little tip on that one.
We're going back to the well, buddy. I got the list. I cannot wait for that one.
What
I'm
is
absolutely
the list?
going back to the well.
Wait. What list? What list do you have?
The list of what basketballs each team uses during the regular season.
Oh,
that's hard to come by.
You got intel from the arenas.
You have brute force.
Conference
you got brute force that out of the internet, man. That's hard. There's no like database. You just got to make it yourself by like literally Googling team photos and seeing what basketball the guy in the middle is holding in the team photo to figure out what their deal is. Because like some teams have Nike uniform deals but have like The Rock basketball. Did you know there was a basketball called The Rock? There is. A lot of teams
it was on
in the
SmackDown
Patriot,
this past Friday night. It was awesome.
Yeah.
a lot of teams in the Patriot division use The Rock, whereas in the NCAA tournament, all teams will be using the Wilson Evo next.
Wow. Okay. I think I have to ask a follow-up here just because I think a lot of people in the audience are probably like only half know what we're talking about. So I'll explain a little whale and then you could take it the rest of the way. So essentially in the NCAA tournament last year, as conference play kind of wore down and tournaments ended, there started to become this like set, like sort of growing group of people that started to notice that the basketball was different depending on the conference tournament. And then in the NCAA tournament, like which basketball teams we're going to use. And if you could like target the games in which teams were using a ball they were unfamiliar with. So like, let's say a team used a Nike ball all year and then they used the Wilson Evo X, that it was like slippery and weird. And if people can go back and check this, unders in the first round of the NCAA tournament last year were crazy. They hit at a very high rate because it was one of those things where some people knew, but it hadn't totally been baked into the market yet. You're telling us. So when I hear you say again, I go, yeah, but like, I know it. Everybody, like a lot of people know this stuff. Now, I didn't know it last year until I saw you in Vegas. And then like, I had to go through the whole first day of the first round. Thanks, buddy. We were on the air. You could come by the studio and tell us while we were watching the games. So I just, you think it's going to be a thing again? Are you going to be more specific and selective with how you look at games? How are you going to play this angle again?
Well, these are the best angles because again, like there's not like a database. You can't go to KenPom and just see which teams are using which balls during the regular season. Like it's very obfuscated. And those are the best kind because if it takes a little bit of brute force, if you got to put a little bit of sweat into it, like, you know, it's tougher for teams to come by. And I guess like when we were talking about it last year, what happened was, and this like story time, I guess, is fun, but so we're making this longer than it has to be. But I think Wilson introduced the Evo Next for the first time last year. And their big thing, and I learned this subsequently, we thought it was the ball was slippery, but it's actually that the ball was like especially grippy, right? Like whatever they put on it, like made it especially fun handle, right? But it also meant that when it hit the rim, it like gripped. It didn't bounce and roll in, right? And so 3-point percentages were just atrociously poor for teams that were playing with the Nike ball in the regular season, and then they went to their conference tournaments and they couldn't make a three to save their lives. And it was like, people were like, what in the hell? What is that? How's a 38% team shooting 31? Like, that doesn't just happen. Like, what's going on here? Because it was across the entire, certain conferences that were using the Wilson. And so we figured, or we just kind of postulated that, like, man, there are some teams that have never used this ball that are coming from conference tournaments that use the Nike, and they're just going to be completely unfamiliar with what's going to happen to them in round one of the conference tournament or in the tournament. And so we highlighted what was like 15 or 16 games where it was like both teams had never used the ball before. And we played round robin first half unders in all of those games, and they went like 80%. It was the most fun I've ever had, just kind of watching those bink all day Thursday when we were hanging out at the old RIP and Peace Cosmo watch party. I think, I mean, I don't know how I don't know how it can be possibly accounted for correctly. And if just in general, like if what we see is somebody tries to account for it because they just macro take all of the totals and just drop them by 4 or 5 points, then maybe the games where you have two teams that played with the Wilson all year, that's the first half over because they're going to be quite familiar with it, right? So there's almost certainly going to be some way to squeeze some juice out of this year, I would say.